Hi Brave Parents! Today we are talking about teenage foster care placements, especially the professional level teenage foster care placements. And I am going to share with you a very personal story about one of my teens. If you guys have not yet subscribed to our channel, make sure to click that subscribe button to catch all of our informational videos on foster care, adoption, and parenting. We received a comment on one of our videos about fostering teens. This video is on our family channel and it's called Tips for Fostering Teens. I will link that video down below. If you guys have not yet subscribed to our family channel, make sure you subscribe to that channel over there where we have more entertaining videos that show you what it's like raising 10 kids in the home and having 13 kids total. But today I want to talk about a comment that we got on that video. One of our viewers, she had commented about an attachment that I added onto that video, and the attachment is called Rules to Live By. And on one of those bullet points, one of those rules, I had wrote that the teenagers needed to take responsibility for their own life, that what has happened to them is their fault. And you know, when she pointed that out, that does sound a little rough. But what I want to talk about today is the type of teens that we were fostering. So that comment on that sheet that I gave the teens was meant for them going forward. We fostered professional level teens. These were the teens that none of the foster parents wanted to take in because the teens were in things like gangs, they did a lot of drugs, they had severe aggression, they would run away a lot, and so they had a lot of things going on in their lives. So when I wrote that, I wrote it with the intention that these teens take that to heart going forward so that way they could improve their life. And with the teens that we fostered, we actually had a few teens that were in foster care, not because of anything that the parents did, but because the children were so completely out of control. Now, I didn't even know that that was a thing. Before I started doing foster care, I didn't know that that could happen. But I wanted to share a personal story that I have about my own biological daughter. And if you're not familiar with our family, I have one biological daughter, 2 stepchildren, and 10 adopted children through foster care. My biological daughter is now almost 21, but when she was younger, she had a lot of behaviors. She was born with some mental health things going on, and so she was a really tough kid to raise. When we hit, it was just before her teenage years, so she was almost 13 years old, we started having a little bit of trouble. We started seeing that she would have, now when she was younger, she'd have a lot of defiance, but it was more little kid defiance. As she started getting into those teenage years, the defiance switched a little bit. It became more dangerous for her. And so what we did was we would seek out help. So we would seek services from our state, anything I could find. We were part of a pilot program where people would come in and they would try to help teach you how to manage the behaviors, and they would give you ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of. They would work with the kids and see what was going on with the kids and why they were being so defiant. We also were a part of some therapists that came in the home, and it's called IFP, which stands for Intensive Family Preservation, and that is trying to keep the child in the home so that you can be with family and not having to place them outside the home for behavioral services. And so IFP came in to try to help us. We had another, like a specialized therapist who specialized in something else that we had come in the home and try to help us. We would take her outside the home for services as well. Unfortunately, she had a lot of suicidal ideation and spent some time in the hospital. And so we had a lot of things going on. What was nice was that while she was at the hospital, and she would be there for just a couple days, but they were able to kind of give me an idea of what they felt was going on mental health wise. That way we could seek out the correct services for her. So let's fast forward a little bit. So let me explain to you what an out of control teenager looks like, just in case you are not familiar. With our daughter, she, at the age of 13, was already sneaking boys in the house in the middle of the night when we were sleeping. She would sneak out of the house in the middle of the night. Now, at this time, I had no idea that this was something that we needed to be concerned about, until one day I figured out that she had snuck out. So we installed an alarm system on our house so that way she could not sneak out. Also, during that time, we found out that she had stolen one of our cars one of the nights she snuck out. Now, keep in mind, she was only 13 years old. So she had snuck out, taken our car, hit a mailbox, and thank God that was the only damage that happened. But she had hit a mailbox, and we found the dent and scratch on the side of the car. At that time, Shaun thought it was me that had done that and then just didn't tell him. But when neither one of us had done it, we knew that unfortunately it had to be her. Also, as she got a little bit older, things got a little bit more intense. She was extremely aggressive, and she would then sneak out earlier and earlier because she knew that we set the alarm at 10 o'clock. And so she would start sneaking out at 9, 8:30. And then as time went on, she would sneak out and take off with our cars. So, and as early as, 9 o'clock at night, we would notice all of a sudden our car was missing. So then we had to start hiding keys. And a lot of times she would be grounded from her cell phone, but she would get very upset about that. And so instead, I would take the phone and then I would find another cell phone. And if you don't know, even if you don't have cell phone service, if you have Wi-Fi and you know the Wi-Fi password, then you can have access to all of the apps on that phone. And so she would just get a new phone and she would then have access to that. I would take that phone away, and I ended up confiscating 6 phones from her in a matter of like a month's time, until I finally figured out that somehow she had figured out our password, and I changed our Wi-Fi password. Things started escalating more and more the older that she got, and she ended up having what's called, so she had ODD, which is what 2 of our other kids have as well, but she ended up going on into her teenage years and ended up having conduct disorder. And what conduct disorder is it is when their behaviors get more intense and they start doing things that are a little bit more illegal. And so we did our very best to try to manage those behaviors, but she would end up a lot of times just outsmarting us. So, it was impossible for us to set our alarm, at 8 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night or she would just start taking off sooner and sooner. There were times where she would take off and then she would hitchhike somewhere, or she would meet people on the internet and she would have them show up at our house to pick her up. So she would just do a lot of extremely dangerous things that had me very worried. So what we had to do was we ended up having her placed in what's called a PRTF. And this is where Jade has already been, and it helps the children to realize their behaviors, and it helps them to learn to manage those behaviors, and also gives them more of a structured behavioral chart, which once Brianna came home, we also used that same behavioral reward system that they were using for her, and that did help quite a bit. While she was at PRTF, we were very reliant on our insurance. And so while she was there, they expect kids to be there about 3 months. And with our daughter, she ended up having a lot of behaviors while she was at PRTF. She even at one point jumped the fence and tried running away. And so we knew she really needed to be there, but at a certain point, once she had been there so long, insurance did not want to pay anymore. And so they basically were starting to say, if she isn't getting any better at this point, then we really want to stop paying for this. And I think this was about the 5-month point. And so they were talking about putting her into foster care. So I would have had to sign over my rights to the state. That way we could get the services that we needed for her, because if she was a foster placement, they would pay longer for her mental health. So at one point they asked me if that would be something I would be willing to do. Put her into foster care so that way she could get the mental health services she really needed. Now, I ended up not having to do that. Insurance did pay for another 3 months, and she ended up being there 8 months total. Then she went on for another month or two in a different group home, which was like a step down. And then she was able to come home after that. But, that would have been a really hard decision. That was not something that I wanted to do as a parent. I did not want to sign my rights over to the state, but I was in a bind because I really wanted her to have the mental health services that she really, really needed. And so that was a very hard decision I would have had to make. And thank God I did not have to make that choice. But at that point, I learned that kids can be in the system and it has nothing to do with abuse or neglect. At that time, I had no clue that some kids could be placed in foster care because of their own behaviors, and had nothing to do with the parents, until I was given that option, so that way she could get the mental health services she needed. We went on then, when we were doing professional foster care for teenagers, to find out that there are actually quite a few teens in the system because of their own out of control behavior and not anything that the parents did. I wanted to share that story with you guys today because I want there to be an understanding that there is a difference in placements, in professional level placements versus regular foster care placements. And some of the professional level kids that we had, they were great and we had no trouble at all. And then some of the placements that we actually had quite a bit of trouble with their behaviors. We had multiple kids run away, and we had some kids that got severely aggressive towards me. But I still really enjoyed fostering the teens, and most of them turned out to be, really great. And I really enjoyed teaching them things. And so our overall experience was really good, but it was also an eye-opener to have my own biological child have so many behaviors and, almost have to end up in the system to get what she needed. But I wanted other people to be aware of that as well, because some of these placements are not always because of the parents, but they are because of the teens or because of the child. And, there is such a thing as a very out of control child that needs extra help. I think that's very important to remember when we're on this journey, because if you are that parent that has that out of control child, it is an extremely emotional and helpless feeling. There were many, many days where I cried because I had no idea what I was going to do or how I was going to handle her or how I was going to make it through without having my own mental breakdown. And it is an extremely tough place to be. Also, when you're fostering children, you think that you're never ever going to give a notice on a child. But when you start getting these kids that have these excessive behaviors, that they are very out of control, it does become a wear out on you, on your marriage, on your family, on your kids. And so that is just something to take into consideration, especially if you have not had that experience, but maybe someone else has had that experience. And it's just nice to have people who, are understanding, even if you haven't been in that situation yourself. Thanks for watching our video today, guys. I hope you learned something new. If you have not yet subscribed to our channel, click here to subscribe to our channel now. If you have not caught our video, 5 tips for welcoming a teen placement into your home, click here to watch that video next. Bye.